The British essayist Max Beerbohm says that there are two types of people in the world. There are hosts and there are guests. As he writes in his 1918 essay called Hosts and Guests, in every human being, one or the other of these two instincts is predominant. The active or positive instinct to offer hospitality, or the negative or passive instinct to accept hospitality. And either of these instincts is so significant of character that one might well say that humankind is divisible into two great classes, hosts and guests. And some people are just better at being hosts. They know the kind of food to serve. They know what it means to set up their houses in the right way for guests. They simply have an innate instinct for hospitality. But other people are much better at being guests. They know how to be served. They know how to be catered to. They know what it means to accept hospitality. And that doesn't mean they're bad people. That's just the way they're wired. And the truth is, most of the time, people who are hosts by nature don't know how to be guests, and people who are guests by nature don't really know how to be hosts. As Max Beerbohm puts it, psychologically, a guest does not cease to be a guest when he gives a dinner, nor is a host not a host when he accepts one. Pride makes an occasional host out of a guest, but he does not shine in that capacity. If a host accepts an invitation from a guest, they do so only because they wish not to hurt his feelings. As guests, hosts are fish out of water. His own table, over his own cellar, under his own roof, it is only there that you see a host at his best. But whether you are a host by nature or a guest by nature, the concept of hospitality, Beerbohm argues, is what distinguishes human beings from animals more than anything else. No other creature on earth invites others into their home for a meal. Lions don't invite lions to share a meal in their den. Birds don't accept invitations to share a meal in another bird's nest. Hospitality is a uniquely human phenomenon. And in that sense, Sukkot is the ultimate human holiday. Because Sukkot, more than any other Jewish holiday, even Pesach, is defined by hospitality. The core mitzvah of Sukkot isn't the building of the sukkah, it's the dwelling in the sukkah. The blessing we recite isn't la'asot sukkah, to make a sukkah, it's le'shev basukkah, to sit in the sukkah. The process of building the sukkah is really just a means to an end. It's a necessary step that helps us to reach the ultimate goal of sitting in the sukkah. And that's why both hosting and being hosted on Sukkot is so fundamentally important. If you are fortunate enough to have a sukkah of your own, then you give others the opportunity to fulfill the core mitzvah of this holiday by inviting them to sit in your sukkah. And if you don't have a sukkah, then you fulfill the core mitzvah of Sukkot by being invited to sit in someone else's sukkah. The only way that this holiday works is if people both extend and accept invitations. Sukkot is the ultimate time of year to embrace your natural role as either a host or a guest. But there is one thing that Sukkot is not. It's not a time to sit in your sukkah alone. Everyone loved Rabbi Pinchas. Wherever he went, he was surrounded by people. On his walk to shul, on the bima, at Kiddush, there were always people around him, absorbing his wisdom and drinking in the joy and the Yiddishkeit that he emanated. And that was especially true on Sukkot, Zman Simchatenu, the time of our great joy. No one's sukkah was more filled with joy than the sukkah of Rabbi Pinchas. Students filled his sukkah with learning. Children filled his sukkah with laughter and song. The community filled his sukkah with the most delicious treats and delicacies that you could possibly imagine. But despite all of that, something was bothering Rabbi Pinchas. He knew that a great rabbi must write a great book. Rashi wrote great books. Rambam wrote great books. Ibn Ezra wrote great books to be truly great. Rabbi Pinchas knew that he needed to write a book of his own. But how was he possibly going to do that? Rabbi Pinchas was always taking care of someone, always answering someone's question, always offering someone a blessing. He was so busy being the rabbi for the community that he knew it would never be possible to find the time to write his own book. And so one year on Yom Kippur, Rabbi Pinchas offered a very strange prayer. God, he said, take all these people away from me. Day and night, they pester me, they bother me, they ask me questions, they never leave me alone. I don't have a minute to myself. I need some peace and quiet. Please, God, grant me some peace and let no one bother me so that I can finally find the time to write my book. And God heard that strange prayer, and he asked Rabbi Pinchas, really? Is that what you really want? And he said, yes, that's what I want. Please, I desperately need some peace. And God said, okay, your prayer is fulfilled. And when Yom Kippur was over and the final blast of the shofar had sounded, no one invited Rabbi Pinchas to a breakfast meal. There were no crowds of people, no delicious blintzes, no bagels and lox. Instead, he walked home alone. He broke his fast on a piece of dry bread, and he sat down to write the first page of his book. And the next morning, the townspeople were very busy putting up their Sukkot for the upcoming holiday, and Rabbi Pinchas waited for the men of the town to come with their tools to put up his sukkah as they did every year, but no one came. So late in the afternoon, he tried to build the sukkah himself, and it was a disaster. He smashed his fingers with a hammer, he dropped a heavy board on his foot, he even pricked himself with a thorn as he was putting on the skach. But finally, after many hours of hard labor, it was done. It was crooked and it was ugly and it was not a nice sukkah, but it was done. And the first night of Sukkot arrived, and Rabbi Pinchas sat in his sukkah alone. No one came to celebrate with him. No one brought him treats. There were no children. There was no laughter. There was no song. It was far too quiet. And Rabbi Pinchas ran out into the street looking for someone, anybody, to sit with him in his sukkah, but there was no one there. And then he became desperate. The loneliness was driving him mad, and so he prayed once again, but this time he asked God to visit him in his sukkah. And God heard that prayer, and he said, where my children are not welcome, I am not welcome. And at that, Rabbi Pinchas began to cry, and he threw himself on the ground, and he wept, and he said, I'm so sorry. I've made a terrible mistake. Please, God, bring my people back. Bring back my students. Let them come and fill my life with joy once again. Please, accept my prayer. Is that what you really want? God asked, because you know they're not going to leave you alone until the day you die, and you may never have the time to write that book. I don't care, he said. Let them come. Let them bother me. Let them pester me all day and all night. Just bring them back. Very well, God said, your prayer is fulfilled. And before Rabbi Pinchas could even pick himself up off the ground, there was a knock on the door, and the whole town had come to his sukkah. They brought platters of the most delicious food. They brought learning and questions. They brought laughter and song, and they brought the rabbi the greatest joy. And except for that very first page, Rabbi Pinchas never wrote his great book, but he is still remembered to this day for his great joy. And to this very day, people still say, if you haven't celebrated in the sukkah of Rabbi Pinchas, then you don't know the meaning of true joy. Sukkot is known as Zman Simchatenu, the time of our great joy. But true joy cannot be experienced alone. True joy is experienced through the sharing of words of Torah, through the sharing of laughter, through the sharing of song, together. That's why we come to shul every week, week in and week out, to have spiritually elevating experiences together. And that is why it is so important to be either a host or a guest, or both, on Sukkot. Because Sukkot may be the time of our great joy, but that joy cannot be experienced